I had been driving through the Arizona desert for hours, the kind of highway where the asphalt stretches endlessly, a black ribbon cutting through nothingness. My headlights pierced only a few yards ahead, illuminating cracked pavement and scrub that seemed frozen in the moonlight. It was late September, just after midnight, and fatigue was creeping into my bones. I'd been on the road since the late afternoon, delivering equipment for a remote job site, and my eyelids were heavy, my body craving rest I couldn't afford to give. I had no choice but to keep going. The next town was hours away, and the thought of pulling off into the desert to nap was unthinkable. That's when I saw it. A sign, flickering faintly in the distance. Desert Moon Motel vacancy. Relief surged in me. A bed, a warm room, a shower. It seemed like the universe had finally offered mercy after hours of endless highway. I slowed, easing off the accelerator, my eyes scanning for the entrance. The sign was old, leaning slightly, rust eating into the edges. A single dim light above it flickered like it might go out at any moment. I took the next exit, noting that the highway shoulder had grown sandy and uneven. My tires crunched over loose gravel as I approached. The motel itself appeared suddenly, just beyond a curve. A low, single-story building with faded paint, a few windows glowing dimly with yellow light. The parking lot was empty except for one car, parked crookedly under a flickering lamp. I felt my pulse quicken. Even the emptiness felt alive. Charged with some unspoken tension, I pulled into the lot, the gravel crunching under my tires, and killed the engine. The desert wind was cold, carrying the scent of sand and dust, dry and oppressive. I took a deep breath and stepped out, stretching my legs, trying to shake off the fatigue. The motel was quiet, too quiet. No sounds from inside, no hum of a television, no voices, just silence, like the building had been waiting for me. I approached the front door and found it unlocked. That's when I noticed the desk inside. A small reception counter, covered in dust, old papers scattered across it. A bell sat in the corner, tarnished and silent. No sign of life, no receptionist. I rang the bell anyway, hoping someone would appear. Nothing. The only sound was the faint hum of the fluorescent light above, flickering rhythmically. I called out, my voice echoing in the empty space. Hello? Anyone here? Still nothing. I considered leaving, but exhaustion pressed against me like a physical weight. I needed rest, a warm room, a bed I could collapse into. I opened one of the doors to the hallway and found the rooms exactly as advertised. Small, clean, but oddly sterile. No personal touches. No signs of prior occupancy except for the faint smell of dust and a hint of mildew. I picked a room at random and pushed the door open. The bed was made neatly, the sheets tucked tightly, a thin blanket folded at the foot. I exhaled, relief flooding me. I showered quickly, feeling the tension of the road melt away with the warm water. By the time I emerged, towel wrapped around my shoulders, I noticed a faint smell of smoke, or maybe it was something worse, burning and chemical, faint but unmistakable. I shook it off, convincing myself it was the desert wind carrying odd scents. I collapsed onto the bed, closing my eyes for just a moment. When I woke, it was silent. No wind, no hum of the motel light, nothing. I sat up, glancing around. Everything seemed normal, and then I noticed something impossible. The room had changed. The bedspread was different, older, faded. The wallpaper, once plain, now had patterns I didn't recognize, curling at the edges as if decades of neglect had suddenly converged overnight. I shook my head, attributing it to sleep-deprived hallucinations. I needed to leave. Something about the motel felt wrong, charged, aware. I got dressed quickly and stepped into the hallway. That's when I noticed the door at the end of the hall. A door I hadn't seen before, painted black, unmarked, slightly ajar. I hadn't noticed any such hallway extension when I entered. The building was supposed to be simple, a straight line of rooms ending at a dead wall. Yet here was a door, dark and inviting in its impossibility, that I approached cautiously, heart hammering. Pushed it open. The hallway beyond was narrow, the walls too close, the air heavy. The fluorescent lights flickered erratically, casting shadows that moved with a life of their own. At the end of the hall, a room appeared, dimly lit, furnished with old wooden chairs, a single table, and a small radio sitting atop it. The radio clicked on as I entered, static filling the room before a faint, whispering voice emerged. "You shouldn't be here." I froze, my body rigid. The voice was soft but cold, deliberate. I stepped back, ready to flee, but the door slammed shut behind me. I yanked at the handle, locked. My pulse spiked, sweat running down my neck. I pounded on the door, yelling for help, but no sound escaped. The radio crackled again, and I realized the voice wasn't coming from the speakers. It was inside my head, synchronized perfectly with the words on the static. "You shouldn't be here." Panic surged through me. I ran to the table, trying to move it, shove it against the door, anything to get out, and that's when I saw the shadows. They weren't normal shadows. They were elongated, moving against the walls, stretching impossibly, as if aware of me, aware of every motion I made. They didn't belong to anything physical in the room. They advanced slowly, deliberately, watching me, encircling me like predators closing in on prey. I backed into a corner, gasping, sweat soaking my shirt. The radio crackled again, whispering more words I couldn't comprehend fully, but the tone was clear. Patience, hunger, inevitability. And then I felt it, a cold presence behind me. Not wind, not air, not human. Something pressing against the back of my neck, a weight that made my knees buckle. I screamed and spun, only to see nothing, but I could feel it. The presence lingered, breathing down my neck, waiting, patient. Hours must have passed. I don't know for sure. Time lost all meaning. The shadows moved constantly. The radio whispered incessantly, and every attempt to open the door, to escape, failed. The motel itself seemed alive, aware of my fear, feeding on it. The walls creaked, the lights flickered, and every time I tried to call for help, my phone was dead, battery drained, as if the building itself had pulled the life from it. Eventually, when the night seemed endless, the shadows receded slightly, the radio went silent, and the door opened as though nothing had happened. I didn't wait. I ran through the hall, through the lobby, past the flickering sign, and back onto the highway. The desert was empty, silent, forgiving in a way the motel had never been. I didn't look back. I had been driving for hours on a desolate stretch of Route 191 in northern Arizona, the desert night pressing down around me like a suffocating blanket. My truck's headlights cut through the darkness in narrow beams, revealing only asphalt, scrub, and the occasional jagged rock formation. It was early February, and the air was sharp and cold, the kind that makes your skin tingle and your muscles stiff. I had just left a small town after picking up a load of supplies for a remote job site and was heading south toward Tucson. The roads were empty, completely empty. I was alone, exhausted, and my mind was drifting as fatigue settled in. When I first noticed the headlights in my rearview mirror, a truck far behind me at first, then growing rapidly closer. I glanced down at the speedometer. I was going 70. The truck behind me seemed to be gaining speed unnaturally fast. My pulse quickened. On a desolate desert highway, vehicles typically move at steady speeds. Something about the way this one was closing in made my chest tighten that I glanced at my mirrors, trying to get a better look. The headlights were blinding, red and yellow streaks cutting through the darkness. I wasn't sure what kind of truck it was. All I could tell was that it was massive, impossibly large, and moving faster than should be humanly possible for a vehicle of its size. My heart began to pound in my ears. I tried to shake off the feeling, telling myself it was a semi speeding to beat a storm, maybe a local driver in a hurry. But instinct told me otherwise. The truck kept coming, and with every mile, it seemed to get closer, almost as if it was following me, matching my turns. Every slight movement I made on the road mirrored instantly. I glanced at the rearview mirror again. It was unnerving. Its headlights weren't flickering like a normal truck's would on uneven asphalt. They were constant, almost hypnotic. I blinked, trying to focus, but every time I looked, it was still there, closer, impossibly close. Though I hadn't even changed speed, I tried to keep calm, reasoning that it was a normal truck, maybe a little reckless driver. I increased my speed slightly, hoping to pass a small curve in the road that might break line of sight, but it kept pace. No matter how fast I went, it stayed exactly the same distance behind me. Panic began to take root. My knuckles whitened as I gripped the steering wheel, eyes flicking from mirrors to road, every nerve screaming at me that something was wrong. Then, it happened. The truck vanished. Not slowed down, not behind a curve. Gone. The rearview mirror reflected only the empty highway, the desert stretching endlessly, indifferent. I exhaled shakily, relief flooding through me. Perhaps my mind had played tricks on me. Maybe fatigue had warped reality. But the relief was short-lived. I glanced again, and there it was, appearing suddenly in front of me at no sound. No warning, just materialized out of the darkness. A massive black truck occupying my lane as though it had been there all along. I slammed on the brakes, skidding slightly on the asphalt, my heart leaping into my throat. The truck didn't swerve, didn't slow, just loomed there, impossibly large, headlights blazing, filling my entire windshield with white-hot light. I swerved instinctively to the shoulder, my tires crunching against the gravel, and the truck mirrored my motion perfectly, keeping pace like some monstrous shadowed my mind reeled. This was impossible. Trucks don't vanish and reappear. Trucks don't anticipate every move you make. But I knew it was happening. And then I heard it, the faintest hum, a vibration through the air, like static, like something alive. I looked closer, squinting, and realized the truck had no driver. No one sat behind the wheel. The seat was empty. No silhouette, no shadow, nothing. And yet it followed, perfectly, relentlessly, every movement I made that I considered swerving off the road, plowing into the desert to escape. But the gravel shoulder was soft and treacherous. One wrong move and I'd be stuck. Couldn't stop. I couldn't escape. My pulse thundered, every muscle in my body tight with fear, and the desert itself seemed to close in, the blackness beyond my headlights growing thicker, almost solid, pressing in around me. The truck began to flicker, just slightly, like heat rising from asphalt. But each flicker revealed something worse. In the reflection of my side mirror, I saw not just the truck but shadowy figures inside it. Human-shaped, but distorted, elongated, impossibly tall. Faces twisted in ways my mind couldn't fully comprehend. They didn't move naturally, but they were aware, watching, patient. I couldn't look at them directly, and yet I couldn't look away that I forced myself to focus on the road ahead. My breathing ragged, my knuckles white. Every curve in the road, every slight incline, was mirrored perfectly by the truck. And the worst part? It wasn't just following me. It was hurting me. Every instinct I had screamed at me that it was guiding me, corralling me into the heart of the desert, farther and farther from any chance of help that I tried calling 911, but my phone displayed no service. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the wheel. The desert was alive with the impossibility of what was happening. Time seemed to stretch. Every mile marker took hours to pass, and every time I glanced in the mirrors, I could feel the presence behind me, patient, aware, unstoppable. Then the truck vanished again, completely. I exhaled shakily, relief and terror colliding in my chest. Maybe I had hallucinated it. Maybe exhaustion had finally broken me. But that relief was gone in an instant. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw its shadow flicker on the edge of the desert. Just a flicker, but unmistakable. I knew it hadn't gone. It had merely retreated, waiting, patient. A predator biding its time. I didn't stop driving until the horizon finally lit up with the faint glow of a town. Even then, I stayed on the highway, refusing to slow, refusing to look back. The memory of that massive truck, vanishing and appearing with impossible precision, haunted me. I could still feel its weight pressing against my chest. Its presence in the cab beside me, even though it wasn't real, couldn't be real. Years later, I drive through the desert cautiously, always aware of the shadows on the side of the road, always watching my mirrors, always listening to the hum of my tires against asphalt. I know what I saw that night. I know the desert has its secrets, and I know that some trucks, some things, appear out of nowhere, follow you relentlessly, and vanish just as suddenly, leaving only terror in their wake. The desert doesn't forgive, and it doesn't forget. That truck waits, patiently, and sometimes, when you're alone on a lonely highway at night, it will appear in front of you, or behind you, or simply in your peripheral vision, and you'll know the desert has chosen you. I had been driving through the Arizona desert for hours, long after sunset, the kind of road where the asphalt seems endless and the mountains in the distance are mere shadows. The highway was deserted, the blackness stretching out like a void. My truck was old, reliable, but I could feel every bump and crack in the pavement under the tires. The desert was silent, except for the hum of the engine and the occasional crunch of gravel on the shoulder. I had a long drive ahead of me, and I was alone that I noticed them first as tiny glints in the darkness, far off the shoulder of the road. At first, I thought it was a reflection from the rocks or a trick of my headlights. But the glints didn't move naturally with the terrain. They stayed fixed, almost hovering, like pinpricks of light. I squinted, trying to focus. That's when I realized they weren't random. They were eyes, dozens, maybe hundreds of them, all staring at me from the desert floor that I froze. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. The lights didn't blink, they didn't shift, they just stared. I told myself it had to be an illusion, exhaustion, or hallucination. I had been driving for hours, the desert long and empty, my mind tired and frayed. But the longer I looked, the more impossible it became to ignore. The eyes were moving, ever so slightly, aligning with the road, tracking me as I drove. I tried to shake my head, thinking it was just fatigue, but the glow remained. My pulse accelerated. I sped up instinctively, hoping distance would break whatever illusion this was. But no matter how fast I drove, the eyes stayed at the edge of the headlights, keeping pace, unblinking, relentless. My stomach churned. Fear gripped me so tightly I could barely breathe. Something about the way they moved, synchronized, patient, unnatural, told me I wasn't imagining this. I wasn't alone. Then I noticed the shapes behind the eyes. Shadowy figures barely distinguishable from the desert itself. They were thin, elongated, moving fluidly, almost gliding across the sand, but always in sync with the eyes. I tried to look away, focusing on the road, the tires, the dashboard, anything to block the impossible sight. But the shadows seemed to bend the edges of my vision, curling in when I tried to ignore them, pressing closer with every mile that I reached for the CB radio, hoping to call someone, anything, but there was only static. And in the static, I thought I heard a whisper, my name, soft, deliberate, unmistakable. Daniel? I jerked back, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. The whisper came again, and this time it wasn't coming from the radio. It was all around me, from the desert, the wind, the road itself. Daniel, come. I floored the accelerator. My tires screeched as I flew down the road, heart hammering, mind screaming. But no matter how fast I drove, the eyes kept pace. The shadows followed, stretching and twisting in ways that defied physics. Every instinct told me to escape, but escape was impossible. They weren't just watching, they were corralling me, herding me deeper into the desert. The thought hit me with pure, icy terror. I wasn't being chased. I was being trapped. I tried to swerve into the desert to shake them off. Gravel skittered beneath my tires, rocks clattering against the undercarriage, and I felt the weight of something brush against the side of the truck. Not a hand, not wind, but a presence, solid, alive, pressing against me. I yelped, jerking the wheel, and for a second, I thought I had escaped. But then I looked in the rearview mirror. The eyes were everywhere now, along the shoulder, on rocks, in the sparse scrub, tracking, patient, unblinking. I realized then what the desert wanted. It wasn't content to watch. It wanted attention. It wanted me to acknowledge it, to recognize it, to fear it fully. The shadows moved closer. Shapes pressed against the road's edge, stretching impossibly high, blurring the line between earth and sky. I could see faint, hollow faces in the darkness, staring, smiling, watching. My chest tightened with terror. I was completely alone, and yet I wasn't. The radio flickered again. Static, then a voice, soft, impossibly close, echoing inside my skull rather than through the speakers. You can't leave. You belong here now. I screamed, trying to drown it out, tried to accelerate, tried to drive faster than humanly possible, but the shadows pressed closer. The eyes glinted in the headlights, reflecting a light that shouldn't exist, forming impossible patterns, moving faster than anything alive should. The road bent in ways it hadn't moments before. Hills seemed steeper, curves sharper, yet the shadows kept pace effortlessly. My vision blurred, my hands shook, and I felt an almost magnetic pull toward the center of the desert, toward the place the shadows seemed to guard. I realized then that if I stopped, if I slowed, I would never leave. I had become prey in a landscape that did not obey logic, only desire. Hours must have passed, or maybe minutes. I couldn't tell. I dared to glance one final time in the rearview mirror. The eyes were gone. The shadows vanished. The desert was quiet again, indifferent, empty. I drove the rest of the way to the next town without stopping, hands gripping the wheel until they burned, vision fixed straight ahead. I didn't speak. I didn't dare look around. The memory of the eyes and shadows pressed into my chest with every heartbeat. Even now, years later, whenever I drive alone at night through desert roads, I see faint glimmers in the distance, small lights that could be stars, but somehow they move with me. I feel the presence of those shadows, patient, aware, waiting. The desert remembers, and the desert waits. And I know, deep down, that the eyes never truly leave. Somewhere out there, in the empty stretches of asphalt and sand, the desert watches. And if you're alone, it will find you.